Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Live Without Training Wheels show. Actually, the last Live Without Training Wheels show of this season before we take a little break for the summer. I'm actually going to go underground a little bit. I'm going to be doing some live videos, but they'll be specifically for those who are a part of the large family homeschool planning group, which I will tell you about in a little bit. But for tonight, settle in and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Lynna Sutherland, mother to 8 homeschool kiddos, and I write at Homeschooling Without Training Wheels. Tonight, we are going to be talking about how to rock the wrong homeschool curriculum. And part of what I want to do is just step outside the box a little bit and talk about picking homeschool curriculum and how do you know when you get it right and how do you know when you've got it wrong. Let me take care of a few housekeeping details before we get started, just to make sure you're comfortable here. If you are watching from Facebook or from YouTube, then I'm so glad you're tuning in. You are more than welcome to just keep watching from where you are. But if you would like to participate in the comments and ask questions, then you'll want to look in the video description for a link and follow that link to hop into the Crowdcast show. That's where I'm monitoring the comments and the questions. But again, you're more than welcome to just stay on YouTube or Facebook and watch from there. Also, let me see. Lost my train of thought here. You're going to get the best engagement from a desktop or laptop computer just because it's easier to type, to comment, and ask questions. But you can also watch on a mobile device, turn it into landscape mode, push the button in the top right corner so that you can go full screen and then tap view chat. And you'll see basically what you would see if you were on a laptop. Then also at the bottom of the screen, if you're here with us in Crowdcast, you'll notice that there is a button that says polls. So you can click on that and share with us. It's always interesting to me to see. It's anonymous, but it's interesting to see where our audience is in whatever topic we're talking about. So tonight the question is, where are you in the curriculum picking process? And so far we're pretty evenly spread. All the way from, everything's on the shelf ready to go to I've got some things decided to a lot is still up, but a lot is still up in the air. So go ahead and chime in there on the poll if you haven't already. Oh, I can see people are answering it as I speak. So yeah, so this is great. We've got people who are across the board and now we have a vote for seriously floundering help. Well, then you're in the right place. Glad that you're here. Let's see. Sorry, I'm a little distracted because something's wrong with my YouTube stream, but you know what? I'm going to ignore that for now and just focus on you guys who are here. And then right next to the polls button, there is an ask a question button. And that ask a question button is a great place for you to drop in questions at any time during the talk. It won't distract me at all. You drop them in there and then we'll make sure that we get to them at the end of the video, providing we have time. If you are looking at the questions in the ask a question box and you see one that you'd really like to hear answered, make sure to vote it up, because if I don't have time to answer all the questions, I'll start with the ones that have the most votes. So if there's something you want to hear, then let us know that by voting on it. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. So it might seem like a funny time to be talking about how to make the wrong curriculum work when we're in that season, in that time of year when we are choosing curriculum. So why fall back on this idea of a wrong curriculum when we maybe haven't even picked the curriculum yet? Shouldn't we just focus on avoiding that problem altogether by not picking the wrong curriculum? Isn't that the conversation that we should be having right now? But I will tell you what, and this is, I'm telling you what my own experience is, and I know all of our personalities are different, so, this might not be your experience, but I have a feeling that if I have this struggle, then there are probably some other moms out there who have that. But one of the things that I deal with, and not just in picking homeschool curriculum, but in all kinds of decisions, is this kind of analysis paralysis, where I have a really hard time just kind of pushing the button and pulling the trigger on something and making a decision. And one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got with regards to homeschool curriculum was from my mom. Now, my mom homeschooled me particularly for kindergarten, and then for 11th and 12th grade. I have 3 younger brothers who were all homeschooled at various points along the way. None of us were homeschooled all the way through, but my mom homeschooled all of us at some points, and some siblings graduated as homeschoolers, others didn't. And so we know, she said, when I was homeschooling you way back, There were basically two options. There was Abeka and there was Bob Jones. And not to slam those curricula, but both of those were actually created for a private school setting. So the options were pretty limited. And now that you're beginning homeschooling, and she said this to me, 10 years ago when I was just starting to get serious about picking curriculum and things, she said, now that you're looking at homeschool curriculum, there are so many more options, which is wonderful. But here's the thing. The vast abundance of options creates a misunderstanding. And here's what it is. It's easy to look at all of these options that are out there and to fall into the thinking that since there are so many options, then there must be one that checks all the boxes. There must be one right curriculum. And if I just do enough homework, do enough research, all the things, then I will be able to somehow, narrow it down to that one choice that's right. And, I've also heard this same kind of idea from missionaries who come back from being overseas, and maybe they've been in, a third world country or not a country that's as affluent as, maybe the United States or Canada. And they come back and they go to the grocery store to pick out something like toothpaste, right? And they are overwhelmed because maybe in the little village where they lived, it was a good day when you went to the grocery store or to the little corner market and they had toothpaste. Hooray, there's toothpaste. Let's buy it and go home. And now you go to the grocery store and, oh my goodness, how many options are there for toothpaste? And things that you would have never considered that were important to add into your toothpaste buying decision are now suddenly, big things that you have to think about. Like, do I want whitening? Do I not want whitening? Does tartar control matter? Does the flavor matter? Does the color matter? I could buy this toothpaste, but in 3 different sizes. How much will I use? Does, how many of these do I need for the family? Do I want a 3-pack or just one? Or, so suddenly there are these huge numbers of choices, huge numbers of factors that go into the decision. And again, it just kind of gives us this idea that, wow, if we really do the research, if we really take all the factors into consideration and make our list of pros and cons, and maybe, we're even spreadsheet geeks and we're like, making spreadsheets out of everything, right? If I do all those things, then somehow, magically everything will fall into place. And there will be this, this one thing that just rises to the surface. And it's so obvious that that's the thing. Okay. Now, maybe you're laughing. Maybe you're like, ha, yeah, right. I know that's not true. I know that's not how it works. But I think we all have that in the back of our minds a little bit. And here's the thing. That means that we're going to keep spinning our wheels until we feel like, oh, the clouds part, the ray of sun comes down and it strikes on the one perfect curriculum. And all we have to do is pull it out of the stone and take it home to our children, and all will be magically well. And because that, magical moment hasn't happened yet, we're like, well, my work's not done. I must have more research to do. I must need to keep asking more questions. I must need to keep, going into more forums and posting for like more random strangers to give me their advice on what homeschool curriculum I should pick. And, the problem is that, there may be times where like, wow, this curriculum this is just a perfect fit for us. And this is so clear. And I just feel complete confidence on that. But, you have so many different subjects and probably multiple different children for whom you need to pick curriculum. And so there are certainly, even if 1 or 2 things just snap into place, there are certainly going to be areas where you're kind of, oh, I'm on the fence and I've eliminated the ones I know won't work, but there's still like 3 good choices for us. And it's kind of like, this is how my husband purchases appliances. Okay, so when we were first married, so first of all, I had never lived outside of my parents' home before we got married. And so when we got married, every single thing that we spent felt like a huge expense to me, right? Like our rent, we were renting from my grandparents, and my grandfather gave us this phenomenally amazing rent. So we were renting this lovely home for $300 a month. And that felt like a huge amount of money to me, like $300. That's a lot of money. Well, that's because I didn't know what to compare it to, right? I didn't have other renting experiences or a mortgage to pay for or anything. But anyway, all that to say, because of my kind of sticker shock over every single thing we spent money on, I wanted to get the cheapest of everything. Like what, we need a refrigerator. What's the very cheapest refrigerator we can get? Or, we need a computer. What's the very cheapest computer that we can get? And my husband is not exactly like an extravagant spender. He doesn't want to just, blow as much money as possible, but he's kind of an economist at heart. That's what he studied in college, and he loves thinking about the economics of everything. And so he pointed out to me that with every purchase you make, there's kind of a tipping point where, if you buy the very cheapest thing that you can buy, then you're getting a very cheap product. The price is cheap, but also the quality is very cheap. And, especially like if it's a computer, it's going to be very quickly outdated and it won't be able to run the latest software and things like that. And then as you go up the price scale, the value of what you're getting goes up and up until you hit a certain point. And there's kind of this tipping point where the price might continue going up, but the amount of increased value that you're getting isn't moving up at the same rate, right? And so he was really good at, hello, Angela from Iowa. He was really good at discerning in whatever thing we were purchasing, whether it was appliances or computers or whatever. He was really good at discerning, okay, where is that kind of tipping point where, up until this point, for every extra dollar we're spending, we're getting a lot of increased value. But beyond this tipping point, we're not getting any extra value or comparatively as much value for the time, for the money that we're putting into it. And so the same thing is true with your time in homeschool curriculum research, right? You start out from this level of like zero information. And at the beginning, all the research you do is vastly helpful, right? So you're immediately looking into things and you're immediately able to probably eliminate large swaths of things like, okay, well, none of this kind of curriculum will work for us. And we don't have anybody who's in this age range, or we're not studying human anatomy this year, or we're not going to do anything with American history. So there are, at the beginning of your research, you're able to make these huge gains in decision making, right? And you're able to, maybe you have a particular method or philosophy like, okay, well, we're Charlotte Mason homeschoolers, or we are classical schoolers, or we're in classical conversations. And so we need things that are going to coordinate with that, right? So you have these kind of big, broad categories that help you to very quickly narrow in on a selection of things. And maybe that brings you down with a small amount of research, maybe like say an hour or two of research, you're able to narrow it down to like 3 choices. But then you're going to get to the point where every additional minute or hour of research that you expend doesn't give you the same return on your investment as those initial few hours did, right? You're getting to the place where now putting more hours into the decision isn't really getting you, the same benefit of decision making and eliminating choices and getting closer to that moment where the clouds part and the sun rays shine on this one perfect thing. And so, what my mom said to me back there about choosing homeschool curriculum, she said that you have this illusion that there's going to be this one right choice. She said, instead, you need to come to grips with the fact that no matter what you pick, there are going to be gaps, right? Because this is somebody else's idea of what things are most important, in what order, and what emphasis to put on different, parts of different topics. And, you are unique and your children are unique. And because you're a homeschool mom, I know that you have some opinions about how your children are educated. I mean, if you didn't really care how your children were educated and you hadn't really thought about it at all, you hadn't really put any time into researching what a good education looks like, you wouldn't be homeschooling. So you've got some opinions already. Sorry to tell you, but you're coming to the table with some, ideas about how this should look. And no curriculum is going to deliver exactly as you think that they should. So I think part of the pain that we experience in choosing a homeschool curriculum is that we keep on, kind of spinning our wheels, imagining that because one thing hasn't risen to the top, then we haven't done enough work. And instead, at a certain point, you say, well, you know what? I've eliminated 394 options that won't work for us. There's 3 left on the table. I don't think that there's a ton more that I could do to discern between them. And so it's time to pick one. It's time to just, close my eyes, flip a coin, pick one. And if there's anything that just draws you towards one of them, even if it's not like super analytical and sophisticated and something that you could compare on paper, it's just like, I don't know, I just kind of liked that one. Then go for it, because you need a way to make a decision, and spending more energy on, research is probably not beneficial to you at that point. So you pick one. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about how you go about choosing curriculum, and especially how you can go about choosing the quote wrong curriculum. And that is that you really need to start by knowing yourself and knowing your own children. Okay, now here's why that's important. There are some subjects, and I bet as I talk, you're just going to know what I'm talking about right off the top of your head. There are some subjects where you feel like, you know what, I could almost teach this by myself, by just sitting in the living room and talking with my kids, or by just grabbing a book that I already have on the shelf and reading it and we talk about it. But, I want to be a little more organized and purposeful and intentional. So I really kind of do need a curriculum to just kind of do the organizing piece for me. And then there are other subjects where you might think to yourself, I know that they need to learn this, but I feel completely out of my depth. I know nothing about this. I don't even know what kinds of things you learn under this category or under this subject heading. And so I need a curriculum, to even teach me what I need to teach, because I don't even know, how to begin there. And so knowing yourself is an important part of picking the curriculum. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about why in a minute. And then the other piece, which is kind of obvious, is knowing your child and their particular, for example, interest level with a subject, or where they might struggle particularly with a subject, or with, the mechanics of taking in the information or showing what they've learned. And so if a huge amount of your decision is based on who you are as a mom and who your children are as learners, then we can kind of alleviate ourselves of that idea that there's some generic, pros and cons chart out there on somebody's website, or even on a curriculum publisher's website, that will tell us which one we should pick if we just look at which has more check boxes in the little, cells or something like that. Because it's really not about objectively, does it do this or does it not do that? It's about how good of a fit it is for you particularly, and for your children particularly. And so, if you kind of go into it with this mentality that, all curriculums have gaps. There is no such thing as a curriculum that does everything you want it to do exactly the way that you want it to do. You assume that you're picking something that isn't going to be quite what you want, and that you're going to have to adapt it. Well, what that means is that you need to choose, if you know that this curriculum is going to have errors, and I don't mean errors like typos or they put the wrong answer in the teacher's answer key or something, but like it's going to miss things that you feel like or you wish that it would do. If you know it's going to do that up front, then you choose what kind of errors, what kind of gaps you want in that curriculum, again, based on you and based on your kids. And let me just say, as a little side note here, that one of the things that causes a lot of stress and anxiety in homeschool curriculum picking is asking for other people's input at the wrong part of the process, right? So you say to yourself, okay, I got to pick a math curriculum next year. And so you go into an online forum or a Facebook group and you say, hey, what math curriculum do you guys like? And then you get 1,063 opinions from people whose children you don't know, whose parenting or teaching style you don't know. And sometimes the opinions are pretty vague, like, oh, we loved this curriculum and we hated that curriculum, right? So instead of going to get input from outsiders, and I'm not saying that it's always a bad idea to get input from outsiders, but you need to do more of the narrowing down first, and then go to either, maybe you're asking like on the online chat option on the curriculum company's website, or maybe you're asking in an online forum, or maybe you're asking a group of, in real life friends. You ask them when you've narrowed it down more and you have really specific things you want to know, like, does this curriculum have an audio option, like to listen to the text over audio? Or how many practice problems are there for each lesson? Or, how much time on average does it take you to do this activity? So when you've got a really clear idea of what kind of curriculum you want, or more specifically, what kind of gaps you're comfortable with and what kind of things you need to not be a gap in your curriculum, then you can ask your questions of other people, but really specifically, not like, tell me what math curriculum I should use, but does this curriculum do XYZ or have ABC? And then you can get feedback that you can filter. And you know what happens every single time I see somebody ask a question like this in a forum? They'll say, I'm considering using X curriculum. Does it have a teacher's manual with it or whatever? Very specific question. And then they get all this other feedback. I don't know, I've never used that curriculum, but there's this other curriculum that we use and we love and blah, blah, blah. And my daughter's been using it since she was in 3rd grade and the manipulatives are so pretty. But if you know going in that you've got a very specific question that you're looking for answers to, then you can kind of mentally filter that out. Like, yes, thank you, not what I asked. Yes, thank you, not relevant to the question that I posted. But when you just go in there and say, what math curriculum should I use? How do you even know how to filter through the material or through the opinions that you're getting? It winds up just kind of like adding more stuff to you that you have to process and sort through. Okay, so like I said, if your decision is going to be based on who you are as a mom and a teacher and who your kids are, then here are some ways to think about that. For example, somebody might say, and I've seen people say this about, say, a math curriculum, there are too many practice problems per lesson. Okay. Now, for some moms, that might really be a burden. If you don't feel confident with math and you're not sure if you would know how to tell if they've done enough or if they've gotten enough practice or if they've mastered it, then maybe too many practice problems per lesson would be really burdensome. It would be really, you would spend hours doing math and you would feel unsure if your child is struggling or getting it, But for another mom, she might say, actually too many practice problems is a good thing because I'd far rather just assign a few problems. And if they get it, we can move on. And I don't care if there's other problems on the page that aren't done. But I like the idea that there are lots so that if we do need more practice, the problems are right there. I don't have to Google and find some extra worksheets or, go get some other kind of supplemental math practice. It's all right there. And I don't mind skipping over problems, but I don't want to have to hunt and search for extra, right? So, that kind of input when somebody says, oh, that's a bad curriculum, there's too many practice problems. Well, then you can filter. Is that a factor that matters to me? Is that a kind of gap that actually I'm fine with that kind of a gap? That actually would fit well with what we, need or what I as a teacher need to support me. And the same thing could follow through with if somebody said, oh yeah, this is a lovely history curriculum and the text is great, but they are really skimpy on the follow-up, essay questions. And you might think to yourself, well, maybe our family is going to read and narrate. We're going to read and we're going to change the way that we share what we've learned. So I don't really care how many fill in the blank questions there are at the end of each chapter, because that's not what we need to do. That's a gap that I'm okay with because, I need a curriculum. I'm just giving an example, but, I need a history curriculum that's engaging where the story, the storytelling of the history is good. And then we can just talk about what we've learned, right? So you're taking in even people's criticisms of a curriculum, and even the criticisms are helping you go, actually, that's probably the kind of curriculum we need. Let's see. Beth says, great points. I can tend towards being a curriculum junkie. So sometimes hearing people's recommendations adds more confusion and decision fatigue. The more options, the more I feel like I'm missing something. Or if you have a child who would be distressed over leaving some problems blank, that's something to consider too. Beth, excellent point. Very good. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because you as a mom might be totally fine with them not filling in all the blanks and just be like, just do the first 5 and we'll see if you get it. But that might really upset them to not do all the problems on the page. So another great point to consider. So another thing you might consider is, what type of mom are you in terms of your comfort level with, say, workbook pages versus hands-on exploding science experiment all over the kitchen table kinds of things, right? You might say, you might read it, someone's comment, oh, there just are not enough hands-on activities with this science curriculum. And you might go, phew, sign me up. That's for me, right? Like I am not the kind of mom who wants stuff all over the kitchen table, and we can find it on YouTube and they can experience it vicariously. Or conversely, you might be the kind of mom who loves that, but you already have a bunch of like Janice Van Cleve or, other books on your shelf that are all about hands-on science experiments. And you could say to yourself, well, we love hands-on stuff, but we already have tons of resources for that kind of stuff. So I don't need this curriculum that I purchased to tell us how to do that because we've got this other thing to supplement with. Or maybe you say, okay, so this curriculum doesn't have a ton of practice with addition and subtraction facts, but our family plays board games all the time. So that's okay for us. We don't mind a curriculum that has gaps in addition and subtraction facts because my kids are practicing that constantly as we're playing board games or whatever the case may be. So knowing yourself and knowing your children and your family and how you guys operate is going to help you to make intentional choices about what, in which direction your curriculum should err. Because again, you have to hold on to that idea that all curriculum choices have gaps. There is no perfect curriculum choice. Everything you purchase, everything out there is going to have some problem with it, just in terms of like not meshing with your ideal vision of what a curriculum should do. And, unless you want to do what like the Layers of Learning gals did and completely create your own curriculum, in which case, more power to you, and send me a link because I'd be interested to see what you come up with. But otherwise, assume that you're going to have to take something that's less than perfect and you're going to adapt it. At the very least, what you can do is you can take whatever you've purchased, or even, if you know ahead of time this is what you're going to do, you can find the table of contents to most curricula online. You can, if you're going to purchase something, you can usually download a PDF that will show you the table of contents, or it will show you, the topics of each chapter that are addressed or whatever. If that's what you really need, like if you say, you know what, my fifth grader is really interested in astronomy. And so I know that we need to explore astronomy, but I don't really know what astronomy is supposed to include and what topics I should cover. Well, if you've got a book that's like, it's not that interesting, it's not that engaging, it's a whole bunch of text, he's not that interested. Okay, well, just use the table of contents and use it kind of like a checklist. Like, okay, well, if we're going to study astronomy, then we need to know about the sun. We need to know about each of the planets in turn. Oh, and I see that one of the things that they're talking about each of the planets is, they're telling you about the mass of each planet, and they're talking about the distance from the sun. And then you can say, all right, so now I know what we need to talk about. So is there a YouTube video that will do that? Or do I have a book about the planets that's going to cover those same things? And then, okay, now I see that another thing about astronomy is we're going to need to learn about space travel. And another thing is we're going to want to talk about a star and a comet. And, so you can just kind of just use that table of contents like somebody's made up a checklist for you. And then you fill in, in a way that's more in accord with your child's learning style, hands-on activities, or check Pinterest, or look at YouTube and do some U-schooling, or, get books from the library that are more, like at a younger reading level, or more full of pictures and more engaging for their age level. So there are just a ton of ways that you can adapt those whatever it is you have on hand. Maybe it's like a hand-me-down thing, right? Somebody else had this, they were getting rid of it, you took it. It really isn't what you would have picked. It's really not your perfect ideal, but maybe there's just not money in the budget for you to go out and buy a brand new copy of your, dream homeschool resource. So how can you make use of what you have? And here's the final thing that I want to share with you. I'm going to share 3 things that I want you to tell yourself when you're in that moment, because guess what? We are all in that moment at some time in the school year when we're in that moment of kicking yourself because you feel like you did a stupid thing and you picked the wrong homeschool curriculum. Okay. Now, that's a tricky situation to be in, right? Because you've got this thing, for some reason or another, it's not working. You're up against a rub. It's going to take you some energy to adapt and to figure out what to do to make it work. But please don't waste your energy on beating yourself up. That is not a helpful use of your energy. So instead of beating yourself up, I want you to remember these 3 things. One is what I've said over and over and over during this talk. There is no perfect curriculum, right? So stop telling yourself, I missed the perfect one. If I'd only tried harder, I would have found that perfect one out there. It doesn't exist. There isn't one. 2, this is how you learn what works for you. So this isn't wasted money, right? It wasn't like, oh, if I'd only tried harder, I wouldn't have wasted this money. No. You're learning what works for you and what works for your children. And this money it's not like you took the money and you just flushed it down the toilet. You took the money and you invested it in an experience that helps you and your children to know yourselves better and what works for you and what you're going to look for next time, right? And then 3, it's a myth that more research would have resulted in finding a curriculum that fit you better. Because remember what I said at the very beginning, it's like buying an appliance. At the beginning, the energy and the time that you invest make great strides towards helping you narrow it down. But you kind of reach a point where the more energy you put into it, you're making very, very small gains in getting closer to picking the perfect thing, probably because you've already done what you can do without having the curriculum in hand and using it in your homeschool. So once you get to the point where you're like, you know what, I've got these 3, they all check the boxes I think they're supposed to check. There are probably things I don't know about them. That's exactly right. There are things that you won't know about a curriculum until you use it. So stop telling yourself that you should have done more research, or you should have tried harder, or you should have thought about it more, or you should have asked more people questions, and accept the fact that there is no perfect curriculum, that you're learning what works for you, and that, experiencing the curriculum is part of the research. You can't do it ahead of time. So those are the thoughts that I have for you tonight about how to rock the wrong curriculum. And I'm going to hop in just a minute to answer some questions that folks have asked. And of course, if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in there. And I would take just a minute to tell you about the Large Family Homeschool Planning Group. And by the way, I'm not checking IDs at the door when it comes to large family. So if you're sitting there wondering, like, I don't know, do we have a large family? This is how you know if you have a large family. If you have enough children or a wide enough gap of ages where you feel like it's difficult to teach them all together, and it's a bit of a stretch for you to juggle how to manage all the different people and the different things that you need to teach, then you have a large family, and you're more than welcome in our group. And so right there below my face, there's a button that says Large Family Homeschool Planning Group. It will take you to a link on my site that will tell you all about that group. We have just started. We're in a forum talking about it. We haven't had any of the live video sessions yet. The first one is next Tuesday, but we're going to be walking through homeschool planning from start to finish. And spoiler alert, I am a pretty relaxed homeschooler and therefore a pretty relaxed homeschool planner. So, I'm not going to come out of the other end of this planning group with like a binder of everything written out, what we're going to do every day of the school year. Don't make me laugh. So if you want some input and some encouragement and some community support as you think through all of these choices, all the way from like, why are you homeschooling, all the way to what would a good daily schedule be like for your family, then definitely check out that Large Family Homeschool Planning Group. We'd love to have you. And consequently, if you want to ask questions about that in the Ask a Question box too, I'm happy to entertain those questions as well. All right, so let's jump into some of these questions. First of all, Rita says, my boys will be turning 8 in January, and so far we focused on math and reading, plus some history from Magic Tree House and a quick science experiment once in a while. For next year, I want to add some more structured history and science, but preferably in a way that grows with us. What are tried and true options that are also affordable? Okay, so I'm going to say, to Rita, what I've said here all along, which is that each family is really different. So I could tell you what we have loved, and I can tell you what's worked for us, but I wouldn't begin to presume that, just because it's been a good fit for us means it's a universally acceptable homeschool method or homeschool curriculum. Rita, a few thoughts. First of all, I think Story of the World is a really great way to dive in to some history. It's very story-ish. I mean, it's called Story of the World because it's written like little stories. So we've enjoyed that. Also, we are using the Layers of Learning curriculum, which if you haven't heard about that or seen it, I can drop a link for you later because I talked a fair amount about it last week, actually, in last week's Live Without Training Wheels. but it's designed to be used by everybody K-12. And so it's definitely the kind of thing where you could start with a little bit, and if they're ready for more, you could move them up and do something a little more complex, or you could just keep it real basic and move on to the next topic, and you'll loop around every 4 years. So you'd know that the next time you came around, you could do something a little more in depth. Let's see, in science. So Real Science for Kids, I think, is a great resource for starting out with some, more quote unquote serious science. And a lot of the resources that we use, like even up to high school level, I just get the basic book. I often don't get the answer key and the teacher book and the tests and the quizzes and the lab manual and the blah, 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 blah. I just want something that gives me the core stuff. And then if we decide to do more, we can add that on. But I don't really want all the, extraneous stuff, especially because a lot of times I'm adapting things to do things with a bunch of people together. So I'd rather have a YouTube video that everybody can watch than a really high-tech, lab thing that only my older kids could do and my younger kids wouldn't be able to follow along or, wouldn't be able to participate in. So anyway, just my own personal opinion, but I generally like to find a good core resource. And then if I want to branch out from there and add in more, I can, which, by the way, I think is why I love Layers of Learning, because it's designed exactly to do that. It's designed to give you the core and then lots of choices and ideas for branching out if you want to and in the directions that you might want to. It's like a buffet, and you go and you pick, the things you want. Okay, let's see. Rita also says, my boys are very interested in music, and we decided to learn to sing together. I have no musical knowledge myself. Short video lessons would probably be best received. Is there a curriculum out there to do that? I looked into Sing Solfa, but wonder if it is too young for my kids because they will be 8 in January. I got to say, I have no idea. If anybody else has ideas or comments that you'd like to share about something, maybe with short video lessons that would help people learn how to sing, I have no help for you on that one. We sing in our homeschool, but it's just, like during our Bible time, we sing a hymn or a psalm that we're working on for the week. I can sing in that my mouth can open and words can come out that are kind of like going up and down in tone. I wouldn't say that I'm good at it. So that is not something that I've worked to pursue further. But anyway, if anybody has any ideas that you want to share there, I'm sure Rita would be happy to hear. And let's see. Okay, this is a comment that Beth left over in the comments, and I popped it over here into the ask question box because I felt like it was such a great topic, and it really actually, when you think about it, aligns perfectly with what we've been talking about tonight. Beth says, as I'm decluttering, I'm having trouble letting go of some curriculum because I wonder if I might use it again someday. Maybe this will help me decide what I can let go of or give me new ideas of how I might use what didn't quite work out for me in the past. So there's kind of two ideas there that Beth is saying. First of all, we'll start at the end. She says maybe this would help her to use things that didn't quite work out in her homeschool, in which case, fabulous. That would be fun. If you can say, you know what, I love the diagrams in this book, but the text is kind of blah. So we're just going to use the table of contents, and we're going to go through and we're going to look at the diagrams as a way to help us understand. And we'll watch YouTube videos to flesh out the concepts or whatever. That would be cool. But also, we've been in a huge phase of curriculum purge because I'm exactly like Beth in that, we have something that we're currently using. And then for everything that we're currently doing, I probably have 3 or 4 things that we're not currently using. And why am I still holding on to it? And I'm holding on to it because I'm thinking to myself, well, this isn't a good fit for us right now, but what if someday this is a good fit for us? What if, we're going to, later on, some kid down the line who's only like 4 now is someday going to be like the perfect fit for this curriculum? Well, here's the thing. This is true in so many areas of life, not just curriculum, but it's really true in curriculum. There is always going to be new stuff out there available, right? So you've got this curriculum. It's not like you're not in love with it, but it's maybe what you might need someday. And, 5 years down the road, if you wind up having a child who maybe is that type of learner or whatever, who might perhaps be a good fit for that curriculum, there are going to be 20 times as many options on the market for that learning style and that subject and whatever, than what is available now. So, it's not just like, is this the best thing out there right now for this, approach or learning style or whatever? It's more like, is this going to be the best option for this 5 years from now? Probably not. And if you are selling it used, other people are going to be selling it used. If it's really a phenomenal option, then guess what? It's still going to be around in force 5 years from now. And the market is probably going to be flooded with lots of used copies of the very same thing that, you are just about to sell, because other people, if it's a huge hit, other people are going to be buying it, and then they're going to be selling it used. So really, I think, the flip side of, if this is what you've got, you can make it work. The other side of that is, if it isn't working and you already know that, and you already have another option that's better, let that one go, right? And here's one thing that helps me to think about this, and especially in terms of like, if you might donate it or sell it used. If you have 5, say, I don't know, handwriting options sitting on your shelf, and there's one handwriting approach that you're using right now, well, some other homeschool family could be blessed by those other 4 handwriting books or whatever, And so if it's something that you could sell used at a lower price or donate, then do that and let another homeschool family be blessed by it, because nobody's being blessed when it's just sitting there gathering dust on your shelf. And truthfully, I feel like those things that are sitting on my shelf unused are kind of mocking me. Look at this purchase you made. Such a waste of money. You never even used this. Why did you buy it? Why is it still sitting here? Why aren't you doing anything with it? Right? So just like move along. I read one time in a book where a mom had all of these old National Geographics, like stacks of National Geographics, because she thought like someday we might do something with these. And they're such, they're full of such beautiful photography, and they're such great resources, and we might want them for like collages or learning or something. And then she went through and she calculated how much the square footage of their house cost. Like every square foot in their house cost a certain amount. And I forget if she calculated maybe based on their mortgage or something. And so she calculated that they were paying, I think it was like $12 a month to store those National Geographics. And when she looked at it like that, she was like, you know what? Those National Geographics are not worth $12 a month to me. And she just got rid of them all, because it was like, you know what? I could do something else with that space. They're not bringing us the benefit of the amount of space that they're using up in our house. I thought that was brilliant. I need things like that to kind of like put it in perspective for me, because otherwise I tend to like cling to things. Melissa says, I've been using the series What Your First, Second, Third, etc. grader should know as a reference guide for a few years now, but I'm getting kind of frustrated with its layout. It seems kind of all over the place, especially with content subjects like history and science. I'm trying to find something to use as a spine for these subjects in the new school year. So Melissa, yep, Layers of Learning is fantastic for that. I would definitely recommend it. Or really, you can just go online. Go to a company, a curriculum company where you feel like, I generally like what they do, or I'm generally, it's a similar philosophy, and look at their table of contents. Or, if you want a little bit more, buy just a really basic book. Like, for example, the Real Science for Kids books. I wish I had one here so I could show you, but they're really simple, like great illustrations, great, the explanations aren't dumbed down, but it's a thin book. So it's not like overkill, but it'll give you the basic content that you need. And then, like I said, you can, jump on YouTube or do whatever to expand on that some. Let's see. Beth says, you're so right. This also sounds like Fly Lady. Bless some other family. Yep. Bless some other family. So yeah, I had to do that recently with clothing, because we had so much clothing that we were holding on to, just thinking like, well, this boy was slender, but another boy might come along who's husky, and maybe I should save all of these size 8 husky boys' pants for a theoretical future child who might be husky when he gets to size 8. Or, you know what? Maybe I should just trust that the Lord will provide for us when we get to that place, and let some other family use these pants that probably won't be used by our family. So, all right. Any further questions? Thank you guys. Such good engagement tonight. It's always fun when there's a lot of folks on here and asking questions and sharing comments. And so much more fun to have the back and forth and the interaction and all that. So thank you, Beth. Looks like we've got 2 Beths on here because your icons are showing up different colors. Yeah. Okay. So like I said, this is the last Live Without Training Wheels show for the season. So I will be back, I think, in the fall. Well, I know I will be back in the fall. I haven't exactly worked out when the first Live Without Training Wheels show will be in September, but I will certainly let you know on through email what you can expect there. And I'll work out a schedule to give you some heads up about that. But as I said, next week and the weeks following during the month of July, I'll be in the Large Family Homeschool Planning Group. So you can click the button below my face and find out more about the Large Family Homeschool Planning. And I would love to see you there. We've already got some great conversation going in the forum, and we'll be doing our first live video next Tuesday. So yes, 2 Beths. Thank you, 2 Beths, for both being here this evening. All right. I'll see you guys around.